Uncertainty in the Middle East after the sudden collapse of the Syrian government under Bashar al-Assad. Him and his family fleeing now to Russia. His family's reign crumbling after 50 years. Assad's allies now rethinking their dynamics. There's video of Syrians cheering in the streets after rebel forces led by a former al-Qaeda commander captured Damascus. President Biden saying he is ready to see what comes next for the Syrian people.
As we all turn to the question of what comes next, the United States will work with our partners and the stakeholders in Syria to help them seize an opportunity to manage the risks. You know, for years, the main backers of Assad have been Iran, Hezbollah, and Russia. But over the last week, their support collapsed, all three of them, because all three of them are far weaker today than they were when I took office.
President-elect Trump also posting on Truth Social, "This is not our fight. Let it play out. Do not get involved." But the U.S. already taking advantage of the sudden change, targeting the Islamic State after the regime's fall in a number of airstrikes. There are around 900 American troops in Syria. With us now, Josh Hasten, Middle East correspondent for JNS.org. Welcome to you, and thanks for being here. Give us a sense of the reaction across the Middle East at this hour, given the uncertainty and what we've seen transpire.
Yeah, I think the key word there is uncertainty. Obviously, the Assad regime, tyrannical regime ruling for 50 years, was a pure evil in the orbit of Iran, Hezbollah, as you mentioned. But what comes next? That's the real question. You're talking about a former al-Qaeda leader. So it's really hard to say at this point what type of leadership he's going to bring right now. Yes, the rebels were successful in deposing the regime there in Syria, which is a positive, but we have to be careful. We can't take it for granted. And that's why Israel right now has sent troops into the buffer zone for the first time since 1974 rather, between the Golan Heights and Syria to ensure that none of these rebel groups turn their guns on the Jewish state. So that's where we are right now. A lot of uncertainty. I know there's a lot of optimism, but we have to be careful. You know, the saying goes, your enemy of your enemy is your friend, but that's not always the case. So that's why we have to be very, very cautious, and that's why Israel's taking those precautions today.
Remind us, Josh, of what life is like for Syrians, or was like for Syrians under the Assad regime.
Yeah, absolutely. Just a horrible, horrible existence for anyone who was a dissenter, anyone who spoke out against the government. I saw the images myself just from yesterday of some of these rebel groups going into the prisons where political prisoners were being held, and it's just hell on earth is the way it was described. Some of the worst forms of torture in all of humanity. These prisoners there, I think 30,000 perhaps in a particular prison there in Damascus were murdered, were killed by the regime. So certainly nowhere near a democracy. I know people now are throwing out the word democracy in terms of the rebel group, but I think we're a far ways away from any type of normalcy or a democratic leadership there amongst the rebel groups. We have to wait and see.
What more do we know about the leader of this rebel group, the former al-Qaeda member?
Yeah, I was just reading a lot about him online today. I mean, he again, a former al-Qaeda member, fought, from what I understand, against U.S. troops in Iraq back in the 90s, you know, supportive of Osama bin Laden. So those were his roots are. Now we're hearing today, perhaps he's moderated. I just saw online that the leader said, Julandi, I think his name is Julani, he said that women can dress as they want. So any group that comes and has to say that women can dress as they want, you know there's something behind the scenes there. Nobody has to say that. You don't have to say that in the United States or in Israel or in a Western society. Just, you know, it shows you exactly where they're coming from. Again, I want to stress clearly, the Assad regime with the support of the Iranians, Iran, the biggest threat to all of humanity trying to acquire nuclear weapons. So they are pure evil. So it's a good thing that they've been knocked down a step, thanks a lot in part to the state of Israel, Israel targeting Hezbollah, an Iranian proxy, almost decimating Hamas and striking Iran directly. These are all positive developments, but we have to keep track of what these rebels do. If they decide that they're going to target the Western world, if they're going to target American troops, Israeli troops, Israel itself, we have to pay close attention in the weeks and days and months ahead exactly who they are.
Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find News Nation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of News Nation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.